Smash Brothers is on the mind this month as we've been promised to get the release of the first fighter of the second Fighter's Pass in June. We know this character will be from ARMS, but don't know if it'll be Twintelle, Min Min, or a bad character choice. But recently, another bit of news continued the narrative that Smash Bros. Is a potent way to introduce unfamiliar IPs to a huge portion of the Switch audience to ultimately get them more invested in the library of games beyond just the fighting game they signed up for. We saw this happen with Fire Emblem in the West back after Melee and Brawl, and it happened again with Shulk from Xenoblade Chronicles. The co-producer of Xenoblade even said, "I think getting to introduce the character of Shulk to those who typically don't play RPGs was huge, and that it was why they added a casual mode in the game." So today we're going to look at all the fighters whose hypothetical new games could be basically saved by Smash Brothers recognition and what those games could be. Let's talk about it. We're about to get right into the list, but I do want to mention, if you enjoy what we do here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell for more notifications. I'm sure you hear every other YouTube channel tell you how important that is as a way for you to continue getting our content, and it's true. We have 2 videos a week, one from me and one from AJ, and we'd love to see you around again. First up, Ice Climbers. There are probably 4 franchises that are the most emblematic of this phenomenon to me, and Ice Climbers is one of them. The last game published in this franchise was the one and only Ice Climber on the NES in 1984. Ice Climbers was one of my mains in Brawl, and the idea of playing as 2 characters at once is really novel and deserves a chance, not to mention the brand recognition now found with this brother-sister duo. For a new game, a safe option would be to stick to the 2D platformer of the original, but lean further into actual game design rather than arcadey mechanics. I've mentioned this in another video, but I'd love Matt Makes Games, who made Celeste, to team up with Nintendo to pursue a tough but easily resettable platformer with growing abilities, like Celeste. Start as Popo scouring the mountain for Nana, and once you find her, you also develop your double jump, enabling you to reach further heights, but also increase the versatility of challenges. And as a bit of a riskier venture instead, they could keep with a similar concept, but a platformer in 3D. This time though, Popo wandered up the mountain but got lost, so you need to play as Nana looking for him, and once you find him, this expands your toolset to enable your path up the mountain, at which point you find the real reason you need to make it to the top. Another NES original, Punch-Out! Saw releases on the NES, SNES, and most recently the Wii in 2009. Little Mac joined the roster in Smash 4 and easily has at least as much recognizability as Shulk, which will help broaden his horizons. Next Level Games, who designed the Wii title, even teased us with a Punch-Out! Reference in Luigi's Mansion 3 in 2019, so it's not impossible. And for a new game, I think the primary gameplay of the combat could maybe update a bit, but should largely stay the same. But one of the huge evolutions we need is the addition of an overworld and maybe some additional story. More incentive to fight than simply to fight, and a bit more character depth. A true Rocky Balboa story showing us working up the ranks in more than a polished arcade boxing game. The second of the 4 main franchises to me is Captain Falcon. He's been around since the beginning, and honestly, even though F-Zero games have come out between now and Smash N64, they didn't really ever capitalize on his fame like they could have. The most recent release was F-Zero Climax on the Game Boy Advance in 2004, but you're probably more familiar with F-Zero GX in 2003. And while Captain Falcon was on the box art for those, I don't think they used him in the way they could have. So the safe game here would be something similar to the Punch-Out! Concept. The primary game mechanics of high-velocity racing stay just about the same, but once again there needs to be an overworld. You start as Captain Falcon, and you defeat specific racers, you win them onto your team. Then they too can join you in the overworld, and you can race as them. But there's also a whole set of racers on an evil team that you don't win over. But then the New Game Plus has you start as one of them, and work your way up the rank of the evil team instead. Or a riskier idea would be one that we've thrown around for a while, but it would see the racing as a smaller portion of the game, and the primary gameplay would be something like an action RPG beat 'em up. This way we can finally use the Falcon Kick and Falcon Punch somewhere other than in Smash. Mr. Game & Watch is an interesting one because I'm pretty sure they only have him represented in Smash as a gimmick character like Wii Fit Trainer, but honestly they could easily make an eShop game series with this character. The same scope as Box Boy or Pushmo, pick up and play $10 to $20 games that are Mr. and Mrs. maybe Game & Watch overcoming small obstacles and making their way to the end. Nothing crazy, but it could sell. Another quick and odd inclusion would be Wario. It's not like he hasn't gotten any games in a long time. There was a WarioWare game on 3DS just in 2018. But he definitely isn't getting the frequency of releases that he used to. I'd love to see a new Wario Land game with the art style of Shake It, but that uses his bike as a small staple in the same way Donkey Kong Country uses minecarts and planes, or instead like Rambi or Ellie as a powerful but tough to control power-up. To be honest, I'd love a Wario and Waluigi GTA-style shenanigans-based game even more, but we'll save that one for another day. The last gimmicky one to mention would be the Duck Hunt Duo. This franchise only had one official release on the NES in 1984, but has had spiritual successors in Wii Play and now Clubhouse games. We wouldn't see a return of the classic formula since it's kind of already on the Switch and Clubhouse, but I'd love to hear some of your ideas. Leave a comment down below of how you could envision the Duck Hunt Duo in a new Switch game, and we'll pull a few of the first week's comments to talk about on our weekly podcast. Now, the third of the primary quadfecta, Ice Climbers, Captain Falcon, and next, Kid Icarus. Pit has been represented in Smash since Melee, but only as a trophy then. It wasn't until Brawl that he was playable and front and center. To be honest, I think he was a character they tried this exact idea with, as in what we're talking about in this video. He gained tons of popularity from Smash in 2008, and in 2012 they made the first new Kid Icarus game since the original on the NES in 1986. But although Kid Icarus Uprising was a widely praised game, perhaps it wasn't the smash hit they were hoping for. It sold over 1 million copies, but came out when the 3DS still was kinda struggling to gain momentum, and we haven't gotten another in the series since. But that said, I wouldn't even make that many changes here. They already completely reinvented the wheel, and their options are either to do that again, which would alienate some of the new diehards and pose new risk, or double down on what they had, but fixing the flaws of Uprising, namely the controls. I'm guessing this may be on the horizon when this DLC is done, since Sakurai is also in charge of Kid Icarus now. And this one's a bit of an oddity because this is the only non-Nintendo published IP, but Banjo and Kazooie. It's a no-brainer that Banjo and Kazooie should have a new game, and there's no better time. In case you don't know its franchise history, the first 2 games were developed by Rare for the N64, but Microsoft bought Rare along with the IP. So the games have re-released on Microsoft system, and Nuts and Bolts came out on the Xbox 360, but was not very well loved. These days though, Microsoft and Nintendo are pretty buddy-buddy, so let's hope for a full-on remaster of Banjo 1 and 2 along the lines of Spyro and Crash remasters, and then a Banjo 3, all on Xbox and Switch. It may seem like a bit of a stretch, but here's hoping. And before we get to the last 2, here are a few honorable mentions, mostly because we either know or can safely assume games will be coming out in these franchises, but I'd like to mention how Smash affects the way we see these IPs. Donkey Kong. Actually, the way Smash impacts this one I think has most to do with the new inclusion of King K. Rool. If we see him back as a featured antagonist with his goofy charm front and center, I think that could bode really well. We've got a video about a potential 3D Donkey Kong on the channel, so check it out if you'd like to hear more. Pikmin. There's an ongoing, fairly substantiated rumor that Pikmin 3 is coming to the Switch, maybe even this year, and Pikmin 4 is supposed to have been started a long time ago. Olimar is probably one of the least likely to specifically benefit from his Smash inclusion, but whatever, let's get Pikmin on Switch. Metroid. Once again, we know we're getting a new Metroid game, but with Ridley joining Smash and the popularity Samus already has, hopefully a new game will garner even more favor, and as long as the game is good. Bayonetta. We haven't heard more about Bayonetta 3, but since this IP is still relatively new, Bayo 3 will be the first new game in the franchise since the Switch has been doing so well. So really, it's time to shine. Star Fox. We made a video on this just a bit ago, but I'd love the next Star Fox game to have on-foot sections so that what we experience and enjoy from his Smash gameplay can be representative of his in-game mechanics too. Kirby. The last of these honorable mentions, Kirby is bound to get another game, but although the way Kirby functions in his games is so similar to his Smash gameplay, the feeling is entirely different. The stakes in Kirby feel pretty low as opposed to the fast and frenetic gameplay in Smash. So I'm hoping that the next game provides just a bit more challenge. And now the last two of the list. The first being the last of that quadfecta, Ness and Lucas, or in other words, Mother. I feel like Ness is the poster child for this phenomenon because he's been in Smash since the N64, but although that probably encouraged a lot of gamers at the time to try to find Earthbound for the SNES, outside of Japan, there hasn't been a single Mother game release since we were first introduced to Ness in Smash back in 1999. This, in my opinion, is an insane waste of an opportunity. Earthbound and Earthbound Beginnings have come back on the Virtual Console, classic consoles, and people have emulated them for sure, but how Nintendo has still not made a mainline new Mother game to this day is beyond me. I do think this would need to be a quirky, weird RPG just like the others have been, but even if Mother 3 is never localized and Itoi never works on it, Nintendo could make a new Mother game if they really wanted to. Even if they do a full-on spin-off that's a Ness and Lucas 2D side-scroller that's more like Subspace Emissary meets Mega Man, they've got to capitalize off our curiosity. And lastly, we go right back to the beginning, ARMS. This isn't even a fighter yet, and I suspect this will be one of the only fighters of the second pass that could benefit in this kind of way, but people have speculated about an ARMS 2 now that it's been 3 years since the first released, and frankly, I think given the decent success of the first ARMS game, I'd imagine that they're using this fighter inclusion to amp up the series before announcing a new title coming summer of 2021. This way, the second fighter pass will be finishing up right as this new game is brought to fruition. I suspect too that whoever the fighter this month is will be one of the cover fighters for ARMS 2. Maybe we'll even have 2 fighters and they'll be the 2 new cover fighters. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's what I think. What do you think? Are there other franchises I missed that could benefit from their Smash fandom? And which of these would you be most excited about a new game for? Let me know all that and more in the comment section below, and we'll pull a couple of comments from this week for our podcast episode. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to Fanatics4 for more content like this every Tuesday and Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, thanks for coming around. See you next time.